is a bit of a story I'm going to start out with, just to give some context to this guy at the laptop here, who clearly isn't having a very good day. I'm sure we've all had moments in our careers where we're just like, what is going on? So a few years ago, I was working as a web developer, used to run my own company, and I was on a call with a client in the morning, and it was about 9 a.m. The client was over in Australia, so it was the end of the day for her, and she's drinking a glass of wine, as she usually does. And we were talking about the website that I put together for them. We talked about the homepage and specifically the carousel that was on the homepage. Now, you know those sliders that you get on homepages? I hate them. Clients seem to love them. So they're like, oh, let's get them on there. So we did that. And she was saying to me, there's something not quite right with this homepage. I'm not keen on the slider. Like, I'm just not, this is not right. And I was like, okay, tell me a little bit more about, what you're thinking. And she was like, I think it needs more slides. It needs more pictures in it. And bearing in mind, the slider on this homepage just had crap quality pictures in it. It's from my phone, so it wasn't very good. And she was like, yeah, we need more pictures in it. And I was like, okay, how many have you got? It turned out she wanted to add about 50 pictures to this slide on the homepage, 50 slides to this carousel on the homepage. And I've been a web developer for about 15 years at this point. And you know how to deal with these kind of crazy client requests. So I did what I usually did, which is try to educate. I was saying to her, if we put 50 slides in there, no one's going to see like anything past the first 5. Pointless. And also, it's going to really wreck performance for the website. It's going to be very slow to load. It's just going to be a really bad user experience. And she kind of just stopped and took a sip of her wine, which probably helped things. And she was like, but that's what I want. I want the slides on there. And I'm like, you see why I put this slide up now? Like, in my head, I'm just like, why don't you listen to me? I'm the expert. I am the web developer, and you've paid me for this. So, like, I know what's what. But it wasn't landing with her. So I had to change my tack. And I'd done a bit of training as a coach that year. This was back in 2020. And in coaching, they basically teach you leadership skills. They teach you how to manage conversations, how to run meetings and things like that. And so what I did was I just kind of wrote it back a little bit, and I was asking her, okay, so let's go back to basics. What is it that we want from this homepage carousel? What is it that we're trying to convey? Why do we want all these images in there? Sure enough, through conversation, we managed to get to a better solution. Oops. There we go. Yeah. So that's what leads me on to this presentation called How to Get Stakeholder Buy-in for Your Ideas Every Time. Because I needed to get buy-in from this client on the way that I was thinking. So before I move on, I just want to say by stakeholder, I mean clients, I mean team members, colleagues, I mean bosses, I mean people that you manage. Anyone who has a vested interest in your projects, in your ideas, they're your stakeholders. Is anyone in this room in a sales role? Just give me a show of hands if you are. Just one person, 2 people. Okay. Is anyone here responsible for anyone, manages anyone? Yeah? Anyone here in a client-facing role? Account management? Okay, so nearly everybody in the room, that's great, because that means that this is really relevant to you. And if there are any questions along the way, like it's a small enough group, just let us know and we can talk it out. Yeah, so this is me. It's the only picture I've got, which is why I've got a photographer here tonight to get some new ones. Business and mindset coaching for creative professionals. So I've been doing this for 3 years. Basically, I help people with things like pricing strategy, with their understanding their niche audience and their marketing. The reason that I do this is because I spent over 20 years, and still do some of it now, as a web designer, developer, and a content writer. And during that time, I founded a couple of my own agencies. One of them was with my brother, and I've worked as a contractor for plenty of others as well. And you can see some of my accolades there. Freelancer magazine, done some stuff for Leeds Digital Festival, Smashing magazine, etc. So I've been around the block a few times. I've got the grey hairs to prove it. And so what we're going to cover in this This is a bit wordy, this one, but this talk is for professionals, or professionals, aren't we, who sometimes get resistance to ideas, whether it's in the sales proposal to a prospective new client, team manager buy-in for a process or product. And there's 3 pillars to this talk. So why we want to get buy-in, the way we usually communicate and why it's hit and miss, and how we can better communicate our ideas for buy-in. So the big idea that underpins this whole thing, and you're going to be familiar with most of what I'm talking about. There's nothing here that's really like new information. But the big idea is don't just educate, enroll. Does anyone know what I mean by that? Does anyone know what I mean by enroll? No? Yes? A few tentative nods, that's fine. Cool, okay, so yeah, what is buy-in and why should we aspire to it? So to me, buy-in is about getting all of the vested interests committed and emotionally involved with the process and the end goals, as well as transcending those individual agendas. It's about getting everybody, playing on the same team, so to speak. And if anyone's ever worked with, big teams, you know how important it is to get that buy-in. And we want to aspire to it because, first of all, we can't do it alone. No matter how big or small the idea, we'll need support or investment from others. Sharing your ideas actually helps to create alignment with company objectives. How many times do we hear about people working in silos, or I've gone off and got a new piece of software and tried to integrate it, and the existing team is like, whoa, what's this? Number 3, engaging stakeholders often leads to a richer and higher quality idea. Now, I've worked on my own for many years. I like to think that I have good ideas. I like to think that I have a complete solution. But if I let down my ego sometimes and that other people's ideas come in, I realize that actually other people have got some really good stuff that they can add to it. So you will end up having better ideas, better quality products and solutions when you bring other people into the process. Trust is built when we take others along the journey. So again, that kind of follows off that one. So much of this stuff is emotional. So much of it is about human psychology. Things happen when people get together and they believe similar things to one another. And that is underpinned by trust. And of course, buy-in is more effective than pushing, educating, or forcing. And I'm going to go into this in a minute, but I'm sure you've all been in a situation before where there's been resistance and where people have been questioning your ideas, or you've been questioning someone else's ideas and you don't quite buy into it. And so often the response then is to just kind of double down. It's not the best way. So I want to give you an example of, imagine you have a PPC client and you want to sell an SEO campaign to them. There's 2 ways of doing it. First of all is educating. And when we educate, we might start talking about how Google search algorithms work. We might give detailed information about how we would do keyword research and all the processes behind that, and maybe some of the software that we use. We might start discussing the importance of backlinks and online PR and how we need those in order to rank the website. And all of that, I'm not talking down. It all makes total sense. Education is such a big part of what we do. But there's another piece to this, and that is enrolling, which for me basically means buy-in. It's emotional buy-in. And when we're enrolling, what we're doing is we're focusing on the client's goals. We're asking them, what is it that you want to achieve? What's the goal behind the goal, so to speak? It's not just about ranking in this case. It's about, what's that going to mean to you? How do we paint a picture for a future scenario? What does your strategy enable? What do your ideas enable for this client, for this for this project? What does it enable? And you can also invite collaboration. So how can you involve people in the process? It's not all about, like, for example, like SEO is pretty complex these days, and it's not just written content anymore. Could you get your clients on camera, your team on camera? Could you co-write content with them? Like, this is about bringing people into the process and enrolling them. And this is how we get emotional buy-in. Now, I'm not so keen on this sort of dichotomy, is that the right word? I'm not so keen on this distinction of left brain, right brain, analytical, logical, linear. We need that. That's the head. This is the heart, right? The emotional, imaginative, and intuitive side of it. We need to make sure that we're hitting both of these most of the time. Sometimes it won't be needed. Sometimes clients will already be emotionally invested. Your team may be emotionally invested, but they only need the educational piece. Is this making sense? Cool. So yeah, how we usually communicate and why it's hit and miss. So the way I've seen it usually go, and I was taught this, I've been in this industry for so many years, and I was taught that we need to educate our clients. And that always kind of sat well with me because I thought, oh yeah, I'm educating. I'm cleverer than they are. And then it's only over time, I'm like, hang on a minute. Like, let's not create a power dynamic where there doesn't need to be one. So we usually try and educate. Someone comes to us with a question, a problem, a request, or we have an idea for something that we want to implement, something that we want to do. And then we propose our solution, usually by means of educating. So as I said a moment ago on the SEO example one, you might go through all the educating type ways of proposing that solution. And that's fine. That's a really good part of that. But it all can fall apart if those ideas get met with resistance. If the client or the team member or the boss, you suggest, I've been in the situation before where I'm suggesting something to the boss and they're like, no. So if it's met with resistance, what we tend to do, we tend to push harder, So we say, oh, no, you need to do this because X, Y, and Z. Look, if we just get these backlinks built, or if we just write this content, if we just do this video, it's going to get us to the next level. Educational stuff, like, if you could even call it that, but it's kind of trying to apply to the logical linear brain. And it doesn't work all the time. If your client is already emotionally sort of bought into the project, cool, you don't need to go any further. But there's the problem. If it's met with resistance, we tend to push harder, and they will then tend to push back. It's the power dynamic, it's the human mind, it's the ego, it's the way that so many of us work. So yeah, force always meets counterforce, in my experience. So there's got to be a better way. And so I want to just give a few ideas on how to communicate your ideas to get that buy-in. And these are very broad brush, but yeah, you get the point. Do less talking and more listening. So often, I mean, I think I got on a sales call. Somebody tried to sell me something a year or so ago, and I was on a call with this guy, and honestly, he talked at me for 20 minutes. And I had to stop him and just be like, what are you doing? You haven't even asked me a question, let alone try to emotionally get me involved in what you're talking about. More listening. Yeah. So, you've heard that phrase, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Do less telling and more guiding. So telling, again, that's that kind of teacher dynamic where we are going to do this, we must do this. Guiding is a bit more like, come with me, let's hold hands, kind of go together sort of thing. This is the way that we're going to go together rather than me telling you how it's going to go. Do less prescribing and more diagnosing. I really like this analogy. I always think about when you go to the doctors, like they don't just prescribe you some pills, they go through a diagnostic process. So if there's any challenges that you're facing in communicating your ideas, then get into question mode, get into curious mode, diagnose what's going on. Then we can prescribe. Do less proving and more inspiring. So proving to me is when we have got a point to prove and we're just like, no, we've got to do it this way because of these reasons. Look, and it can be a convincing case to bring together. Look, other companies are doing it in this way. This new software is available and it's got all of these good case studies. Like, here's all the data. Proving has its place, but if it's not working, let's get into inspiring mode. Those kind of questions I was on about. Okay, so where is this going to take us? What is it going to enable for us as a company? When you inspire, you don't need to prove anything because people prove it to themselves. Less following and more leading. And what I mean by this is sometimes we can go the other way, where we stop entirely and we just let the client or the boss or whatever take over and we just check out. And that's obviously not a good place to be either. So leadership, really, as I was writing this slide, I was thinking the key point here is ultimately getting buy-in. It's all about leadership. It's about taking people on a journey. So when to consider this idea? Yeah. So like, as I said at the beginning, we kind of know this. We kind of know all this. But the question is, are we doing it? I know that I'm not all the time. I get into that teacher mode quite often, and I try and tell people the way that it's going to be. And that doesn't always land. So, yeah, this idea of buying is applicable in all kinds of situations. In sales conversations, the last thing you want to do when you're selling anything, and by the way, you're always selling something, whether it's, suggesting where to go for dinner with your friends. That's a sales process, right? Lame, but true. In sales conversations, you want to get buy-in, get enrollment during project scoping. Just because something's like a project has come off, it doesn't mean that we no longer have to get re-enroll people in our way of thinking, in our ideas. Project check-in meetings, that's just an extension of that. Like, in fact, check-in meetings with clients is a very good opportunity to gain buy-in again for what you're doing. When designing, writing, and building, so when actually doing the work, when you're creating anything, and in marketing. Yeah, you know this, right? But so much of this is about emotional buy-in, and we've got to be bought into it ourselves first. Otherwise, that lack of conviction is going to find its way into the materials that we create. So yeah, the takeaway for this slide really is that enrollment or creating buy-in is a way of being. It's not just something that we do. The way of being for most of us is educating. We've all been educated to educate. We've all been told in this industry that we've got to educate our clients, but actually, I think enrollment is a way of being. It's a way of, it's a way of basically keeping the ball rolling with those clients and with, I say clients a lot, but as you know, it applies to any situation. And so, yeah, finally, just some takeaways, really, because all this sounds great, but how do we actually implement it? So first of all, use forms and surveys. It's so obvious when I say it, but when it comes to an idea that you have, for example, maybe you've got a new CRM or something that you're integrating with your business. Like, how do you get people to buy into that process? Find out what their needs are. Don't just try and do it. There's a really good saying in the charity sector, which is when it comes to like co-creating things, and they say nothing about me without me. And I really like that. And we should apply that to the way that we think in business as well. So yeah, before you do anything, solicit opinion from people. Run useful goal-focused meetings. Everyone hates meetings, but actually, when they're done well, when they're structured well, when they have a purpose, they can be incredibly productive, far more so than even an online sort of thing or doing things over Slack, etc. Presentations and webinars, again, like, let's not create a load of stuff, let's not do a load of stuff, let's communicate the idea first to stakeholders and see how it lands, get feedback. Run co-creation workshops. This is great with clients, as I mentioned with the SEO example earlier. What does that project actually look like? If you can bring a client into the process before you've really laid anything down, they're going to be bought into whatever you suggest so much more powerfully than if you don't do that and you just ping an email with a proposal in it. Run pilot programs. This is a great one, particularly as a coach. Like, I don't really do anything for my clients. It's more facilitating their thinking. And so if I have a program that I want to run, I'm not going to produce a load of materials and then test it. I'm going to actually put it out there very, very top level, find out if anyone's interested in this thing. And if they are, then I can get their buy-in to do a pilot program with me. Oh, I saw that you responded to this question that I put on LinkedIn. Would you be interested in talking about it? Yes. So then we run a pilot program. And yeah, I guess all this really just leads to this last point here of building and presenting a business case. That's essentially what we're doing. We are creating something that we believe is going to move things forward for the business, for the client, for ourselves, whatever. Present that. Yeah, build it in, get the buy-in, use these different techniques for doing that, and present that case. So there's a few books that I really recommend. If you're interested in this, like figuring out this topic a bit more, Coaching for Performance is really good. Has anyone here done any coaching or trained in coaching anyway? Yeah, yeah. Have you heard of this book? Yeah, so Coaching Performance is like it's like a Bible for coaches. It's got in something called the GROW model, which is a really nice framework for getting to the heart of whatever it is that you're trying to move forward. Start with Why is a really good, I'm sure everyone's heard of Start with Why. Yeah. The reason that I think this is important for enrollment and for getting buy-in is that what he does in this book is he gets underneath kind of like what people are doing. He gets to the heart of it, which is where you need to go from. You know, if you're going to make anything happen emotionally, you need to start with Why. So that's a really good book. And Get Together as well, which is a bit of an outlier, but a really good one nonetheless. This one talks about political movements, communities and things like that. When I was reading that, kind of struck me that any organization is a community, whether it's a business, whether it's a political party, whether it's a sports group. This is all about fostering belief, like similar values, and inviting people into that. That is a great way of course, getting buy-in. If you all believe the same thing to begin with, you don't need to go through this process. So I really recommend reading that. And yeah, that's the end there. So you can scan that QR code if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, find out more on mattsaunders.uk. Thank you very much.